Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down and do another video for you guys and gals. Let me get a sip of my water first. A beautiful radio voice going, and let's talk about this. All right, I had someone raise a point because they clearly didn't watch the video, but it raises the point because I did have a few people accuse me of that when I did that video a few weeks back discussing that it showed that paleo people were largely plant-based, like 80% plant-based. I said, hey, that's interesting. But I made this video that came up, it'll either be, I guess, yesterday by the time this one comes live or this morning. And I said it's ridiculous to use arguments about cavemen and other species and other stuff when discussing how we should eat today. That it's not a logical argument. It's not based on evidence, that it's irrational. Okay? You know, and someone said, well, isn't that hypocritical because you brought up the point before with the paleo stuff and then compared it to the people going on about Homo erectus being super carnivores, because Homo sapien were never super carnivores. I'm like, but it's not hypocritical because I didn't use it to say this is how we should eat. And when I made that video, I thought I made it quite clear, and we should be clear on this stuff. Historic eating patterns are not how we determine what is optimal inside the human body, right? No more than we would go back and look at exercise patterns or whatever else from 10,000 years ago and say, this is what we should be doing right now to be optimal, right? That's not how it works. Again, some of that falls back under appeal to nature, the appeal to nature fallacy, meaning because something occurs some way in nature that it must be best. Well, that's ridiculous. Nature is actually a never-ending set of failures, right, with only a small rate of success. And again, victory of the successors, those are the ones who survive and pass on their genes. But it's a ridiculous argument because we should be looking and saying, hey, let's test and see what does what in the human body. Let's see which groups of people who currently live the longest, have the lowest rates of disease, eat in certain rates. Let's eat foods in the lab and see what happens to your blood work. Let's see what happens in long-term clinical trials and different people follow different eating patterns. And we get really good data from that. That's useful. That's what we should be basing it on. The reason when I made that other video is that I stumbled across it, some of my interesting stuff of some research that had come through and a paper written up, was looking at that, and I brought it up to say that this debunks the nonsense that all of our human ancestors sat around eating ribeyes all day long. You know, this silly, ridiculous carnivore and caveman fad. Not based on reality, it's not based on real history, it's not based on biology. My point for that was to say that that's nonsense. It wasn't saying, hey, because we eat this way we should, and I made that clear in the video, and people missed that. It was people literally jumped up and made the same fallacy these carnivore type people make. They made the same fallacy. They assumed that because I said people ate that way, that I'm saying that that's justifying how we eat today. Even though in the video I said it isn't. Okay? Said it's an interesting fact, but we shouldn't base our eating behavior on that because it's a logical fallacy. That's not how this works, right? It's not particularly relevant. I did find it interesting. What I found was interesting to me is that it was very similar to what I was already recommending. Not completely, because obviously we're not going to be eating the same foods those people were. We don't even have the same foods. And we have better foods now. We have superfoods that didn't exist back then. We have access to better nutrient density. We have higher quality vegetables and stuff now than what existed in nature thousands of years ago. Way better, way higher vitamin and mineral content. So again, we really shouldn't be caring about that to a large extent. I noted that it was interesting that it's very similar to what I say. You know, I would tell people, 80 to 90% plant-based, 10 to 20% animal-based is probably pretty good for overall health, overall muscle growth, athleticism, all these things. It's actually pretty, just a reasonable, loose, very loose guideline. Okay, because it's all it is. It's a loose guideline. Not something that you should sit down and start saying, well, I better calculate this down to this 20%. That's ridiculous. That's not even rational. Just saying it's probably, if you're eating a balanced, healthy diet, that's probably about where you're going to end up, loosely. But again, I made it clear that it's not a prescription, but because they ate that way, that's not a reason to do it. However, because the other side of this tries to claim that all of our ancestors lived on 90% red meat or something crazy and insane, which isn't true. Our species has never, in any large demographic number, ever done that. Just like none have ever been absolute vegans either, right? Those would both be, they just have not really happened. There's been some small isolated tribes that were not particularly successful. They didn't build amazing health or amazing longevity or even particularly sizable populations who were largely carnivore. They've been very small, tiny, isolated groups. By and large, our species, humans, have never done that. But they've also never been vegans either, right? So both of these extremes don't match historical patterns. But they tried to pretend that it does. And because they've done that, when you debunk it, people then presume that, oh, you must be saying then that we should be eating that way because of history. No, you should eat the way that the data shows it is healthy and beneficial for you to eat towards your various goals, whether they are longevity, lower cancer, or to be a competitive bodybuilder. You should eat towards your goals based upon the evidence that is available, not some appeal to nature. But that tells you a lot about the mindset of the people, because even when you told them that no, it's not that, they still just assume that that's what you're saying. No, I was just simply debunking the other side's nonsense. Because not only does the real world data suggest they're wrong, very clearly, we need plants, we need vegetables, we benefit from them massively benefit from them. Like, that's the data we need to just debunk their nonsense. But the simple fact that it also showed that their historical data is wrong also. Their diet is basically an ideology and a religion. It's not based on either modern science, nor is it based on history. It's based on nothing but an ideology, and a crazy one. Okay? Because even our ancestors didn't eat that way. Our ancestors ate high starch diets, largely plants. And even though I say that is what most of us should probably be eating, it's not because of the historical context. It's because that's what the data shows. The modern data on modern humans. That's what we should be looking at. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.